When it comes to high anxiety and anxiety disorders, are we going to feel this way forever, or is this just a passing phase? In this video, I'm going to explain exactly why, no matter how bad your anxiety feels right now, this is never a permanent state. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time, I'm Tim Box, mind coach, anxiety therapist, and author of the book Clear Your Head. In a recent video explaining why anxiety isn't something we have, but an emotion we feel, a few people were asking me to clarify a section where I spoke about any anxious state being transient. How can that be when many mental health professionals are telling us that anxiety disorders are permanent? One individual I spoke to was telling me how everyone knows anxiety disorders can't be cured, only managed. And needless to say, I find that attitude somewhat frustrating. In my nearly 15 years experience of working with anxiety issues, it's both unnecessarily limiting and just plain wrong to tell someone they can't get the other side of their anxiety issues. So in this video, I'll explain why I believe that anxiety is temporary, why that framework of thinking is more accurate, and how adopting that framework can change your relationship with anxiety completely. First things first, let's clear something up straight away. We shouldn't be talking about whether or not we can cure anxiety. Anxiety is an emotion, not an illness. The word cure is simply the wrong terminology. We're human beings, and as such we are all supposed to feel anxious at times. It's a perfectly normal and healthy part of our emotional range. But whilst we might always experience regular anxious feelings, after all, every day brings important things to focus on, that doesn't mean we will always suffer from anxiety issues. Feeling anxious and suffering with anxiety issues are two different things, but one potentially becomes the cause of the other when we start to frame anxiety as something we should be concerned about. The notion that anxiety is permanent often has its origins in the idea that it's a disorder or illness that we can't recover from. That thinking only holds us back. Here's why we don't have to and probably shouldn't buy into that framework. One of the reasons why we know the way we feel right now is temporary is because our brains never stop growing. The idea of certain disorders being permanent was formed long before we knew about our brain's true ability to adapt. There's this thing called neuroplasticity, which is the brain's capacity to change and adapt. It's why the way we think, feel, and respond to the world isn't set in stone. Your brain is literally designed to update itself based on new experiences, learning, and healing. Now, whilst the phrase was originally coined by a Polish neuroscientist in 1948, we didn't discover that this continues throughout our entire life until the year 2000, which is a full 20 years after generalized anxiety disorder was given its first official categorization in the third edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So when we talk about anxiety issues or disordered responses, we're talking about how our brain has learnt to react to certain situations. And the key here is that anything learnt can be unlearned or updated. This learning process continues throughout our entire life and thus means change is not only possible, but inevitable. When a mental health professional diagnoses you with an anxiety disorder, it's important to recognize that that diagnosis is not based on some medical test. They're not looking for some genetic flaw or neurological malfunction. It's based on the way you think, feel, and behave at the time of your diagnosis, and whether those responses fit within the various criteria that currently qualify as a disorder. But as we've already said, those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are not permanent. Let's imagine you seek help and go to a therapist. It doesn't matter what type of therapist you're seeing, whether it's EMDR, hypnotherapy, CBT, or any other approach. All forms of therapy are aimed at achieving one primary goal: facilitating change. The aim is always to alter your automatic responses so that certain stimuli now produce a different, more desirable emotional response. For example, someone might come to therapy with a fear of public speaking. They stand up to speak in front of a room full of people and they involuntarily feel a debilitating level of fear that causes them to want to run out of the room. The aim of therapy is not to teach them how to keep going whilst afraid. For some methods like exposure, that might be a part of the process, but ultimately, the aim is that at some point in the future, when that person stands up in front of that same room full of people, they no longer experience the fear they previously felt. It's the same with anxiety. The purpose of therapy is to help you change the way your mind responds so that your old triggers don't create the same anxious responses. And guess what? That's neuroplasticity in action. But here's the most important point I'm making. Your diagnosis is based on the patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors at a given time. Once those patterns change, your diagnosis no longer applies. If your anxious thoughts and responses no longer fall within the criteria for an anxiety disorder, that label just doesn't fit anymore. And that's the whole point of therapy, facilitating that shift so that you no longer meet the diagnostic criteria. When your responses change, you're no longer bound by that label of disorder. One of the most important parts of the change process, even when it's a journey you take with a professional, is realizing that you are the one making the change. It's not the therapy that fixes you, it's the therapy that helps you see that you had the power all along to update the way your mind responds. A good therapeutic approach doesn't just reduce anxiety, it empowers you. When you realize that you are the one responsible for that change, you regain your agency. And with that agency comes control over your own responses moving forwards, and thus the confidence that you won't fall back into those old anxious responses. This is key to long-term progress. When you recognize that you've made the change yourself, you stop fearing any relapse because you know that you're in control of your mind, not the other way around. So let's be real for a second. If a therapist tells you that your anxiety disorder can't be cured, only managed, I'm here to say that you don't have to accept that rather bleak outlook. Anxiety isn't an illness, and all of our automatic responses are ripe for updating. Your mind has the power to adapt and grow, no matter how long you've struggled. Anxiety may be an emotion that we all feel at times, but suffering from it doesn't have to be permanent. You have the ability to retrain your mind, to regain control, and to move beyond any anxiety disorder. I really hope you found this video helpful. If you did, then please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more anxiety content that helps put you back in control. And if you want more tips on overcoming anxiety, check out the members area of the channel where you'll find more resources to help you on your journey, as well as access to a weekly members only live stream where I answer your anxiety related questions directly. But that's all for now. I'm Tim Box. Always remember, be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.